It is 6:31. Welcome to the March 17th, 2025 meeting of the Library Commission. This is a hybrid meeting with commissioners, city staff, and members of the public participating in person at the Arriaga Family Rec Center in accordance with public health guidelines for in-person meetings and the public participating remotely. We'll start with the roll call. Is Commissioner Westcott? Has he joined us remotely?
He's here remotely. I just promoted him to panelist. Here he comes. He's joined as a panelist. Commissioner Westcott, can you let us know if you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Brian Westcott.
Great, thank you.
Welcome, Brian. Also present are Kim Crockett, Michael Herrick, David Pollock, Scott Schaefer is not here.
Right.
We have our new member, Sarah Sisbot. And Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words about your interest in the Library Commission?
Sure. Hello, my name is Sarah Sisbot, and I'm so happy to join you all. I live in Menlo Park, and I have two boys, a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we are at the library every week. We love it so much, and I'm so happy to have this chance to support this institution we love. I've worked at Stanford Library in the past, in grad school and after. I have been a project manager for a long time, most recently at Stanford at an awful clinic there, and for volunteer work. I am a volunteer buddy with Bay Area Cancer Connections, and I have been recently a volunteer chaplain at the Stanford Hospital. So happy to be with you.
Yeah, very happy to have you. Welcome. Also with us today are Staff Library and Community Services Director Sean Reinhardt and Assistant Library and Community Services Director Nick Shegda. Nick will be helping facilitate the meeting. Nick, could you please take a moment and provide instructions to the commission and members of the public in attendance on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair. For members of the public who are attending this meeting virtually and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those who might be calling in from a phone, please press *9 to raise your virtual hand. Members of the public attending remotely who wish to speak, please take a moment to make sure your first and last name are updated on Zoom. I have to put my glasses on before reading this, or you may provide your name and the spelling as you are called to speak. Public comment will be heard in the order received and is limited to 3 minutes in length. For members of the public attending in person, there are comment cards available right there on the end of the table. Please fill one out and turn it in to me before public comment is called for that item we should speak on. If there are a large number of public commenters, the time limit may be adjusted by the chair in order to allow everyone a chance to comment. When your turn for online public comment arrives, staff will unmute you. And with that, I'll return the meeting back to the chair.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject that is not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You're not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under the public comment, other than to provide general information. Do we have any public comment on items not appearing on the agenda?
This time, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use that raise hand function on your Zoom screen. If you're in person, please fill out a card. Seeing none, back to the chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to regular business now. Under regular business, the Library Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Library Commission approval. The first item under regular business is to approve the meeting minutes from our February 24th, 2025 meeting. Do we have any public comment on this item?
A quick note before I call for public comment, I noticed a misspelling of Commissioner Schaefer's name, and I will correct that in the approved minutes. It doesn't need to be voted on or anything. That's just something that I administratively embarrassingly let me get past 3 different people. Sorry about that, Commissioner Schaefer. Is there any public comment on item D1, approving the minutes from the February 24th, 2025 meeting? Seeing none, back to the chair.
All right, is there any discussion by library commission members on the meeting minutes from February 24th? Would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve the minutes? The motion and a second by Kim.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Pollock, seconded by Commissioner Crockett to approve the meeting minutes. We're gonna do a roll call vote. Commissioner Crockett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Herrick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollock, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Sisbot, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Westcott, how do you vote?
Yes,
And Chair Orton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the recommended makerspace use guidelines. Would you like to, one of you, introduce this item, and then we'll take public comment?
Sure, let's do.
I'm happy to talk about it if you want to put it on the screen.
I will do so.
So, as you all know, the new Bellhaven Library includes a makerspace. We've been operating it on kind of an ad hoc drop-in basis, as we have observed how people want to use it. And as we are starting to install more equipment that people are able to use, creating guidelines that become necessary, just to let people know the expectations for using the equipment and for using the room. And so the staff has put together basically what's codifying what we're currently doing. We thought at this point, there's enough there that we wanted to bring it to the library commission for your review and comment and potentially a recommendation. As you know, policies, we bring them forward from time to time, either to create new ones or to update them. This is a new policy, however, it does draw pretty significantly from other policies that already exist, like the library use guidelines and some other policies. Most of the information in here is kind of specific to that room and the equipment that is in there. Some of the keywords are about whether there are scheduling conflicts, you know, with your kids' priority, screen there. The general rules, they don't include every single library use guideline about, you know, disrupting things and so forth. It's really mostly tailored to the equipment specific to that room, however, the overall library use guidelines to apply. And I think you scroll down, also just noting that for some of the equipment, we may require that the user undergo a tutorial or training or in some cases, even to sign a release agreement before they can use the equipment. For example, like the kiln, is something we probably want both training to be completed as well as a release before we let folks use it. And that's kind of the summary. I know the policy is in the packet, so we're happy to answer any questions you may have, and we do recommend that the library commission recommend that.
Great, thank you, Sean. Before we discuss further, would you like to ask for public comment?
Sure, at this time, if you would like to make a comment on item D2, recommending the library and community services, services department policy makerspace use guidelines, please raise your hand now or fill out a comment card. Seeing none, back to you, Chair.
I'd like to open it for discussion. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the makerspace proposed guidelines? Michael?
I have a sort of a question, not to revise this particular policy, but certainly on the room scheduling priorities. When I was reading through it, I wasn't on this commission when the whole question of the Onetta Harris Center and the naming happened last year, but because I came in just in the wake of that, I sort of been sensitive to it, and I just sort of wonder how community groups in the Bellhaven neighborhood in particular, I'm not talking about the corporation that funded the center, and they have a lot of maker spaces of their own. But I sort of see those two entities in position number 4, and you'd have to sort of incorporate as a nonprofit to get up to position number 3. And so I guess what I'm just concerned about and wondering, and I know that city staff are very supportive of the community, and it's usually city events that are bringing them in, so they're really number 1. But even just in policy, I just sort of wonder if there are ways, especially at the Bellhaven campus, to just elevate the sort of prerogative and rights of the people who live right there. And then, you know, the hyperlocal thing is a great thing that we have going to the funding. And so I don't think there's a way to revise this now, and I'm not asking for that, but I thought it was just an appropriate time to just mention it to city staff. So that in the future, you can sort of consider it, because it seems like, you know, a good idea, even these drab policies like watching paint dry, to just get that in there, so, in any way possible.
I think that's a great point. We have made considerable efforts to make sure that hyperlocal residents have first access to the spaces and the activities at the community campus. It's something that we'll continue to do. But point well taken, that if we can find a way to sort of put that into the policy, I think we will.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll elaborate on that a little bit. I think something I appreciate Commissioner Herrick mentioning, or Vice Chair Herrick, that you know, maybe take that under advisement for potentially future update, not necessarily to revise right now. There's already an existing prioritization in the form of the master fee schedule for renting the makerspace, which is kind of what this would mostly apply to, room scheduling. For local residents, meaning residents who live within the service area of the Bellhaven Community Campus receive a 35% discount. So there is that incentive. But point well taken about even within, after that, having maybe a resident, non-resident stratification of properties makes sense. This section takes a page from the overall facility rental policy, which doesn't quite go to that level of granularity. So I think we want to look at them together. And I think based on your comment, it's a good point. And so we will take a look at them all together the next go around, which for the makerspace use guidelines will probably be sooner rather than later, because the space continues to evolve. We anticipate probably needing to come back at some point with some additional clarifications or tweaks as more people are using it, and we learn how best to adjust the guidelines to facilitate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a similar question, because I saw Rose today at the Makerspace, because I visited today, and it's such a wonderful space. But there aren't, it's still, like you said, evolving with the usage and the schedule, so it's unclear when it's open and how it's staffed. And it is the library's responsibility, so I'm just wondering what the plan is for that. It's hard to have use guidelines when there isn't even kind of a schedule or hours listed and yet, so I'm wondering what the plan is.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think there was an update to the Library Commission a 3 months ago, outlining that the makerspace is open for drop-in use at all hours that the library is open, so that the hours, the operating schedule is the same as the library, which is 7 days a week. It's open 7 days a week, except when it is actively programmed with like a class or a rental. I don't think we had any rentals yet. We do have a number of classes. A lot of them are during the day. So for example, the senior center visitors usually avail themselves of the morning classes. There's a ceramics class. There are some various arts and crafts classes in there. The after school program, so school age kids tend to use it more in the afternoons, either are in-house Bellhaven Youth Center program. We'll have the youth in there to do usually arts and crafts type activities. Occasionally the library will sponsor a program in there, a free program. There are not as many in the evenings. We are working our way toward having open lab hours. So right now we're in kind of a pilot period during the drop-in hours to kind of see how people are using the space and what are some of the requests people have for the equipment that's in there. So we anticipate having some more kind of open lab structured kind of time added to that program, but that's what we're currently doing.
How are Menlo Park residents, I mean, I'm supposed to know about the makerspace, because when I went down there, I just wanted to make sure it was open. So I went on the Menlo Park City website for the library, and there's no mention of the makerspace on the website. I did a little bit of digging, it was in the activities guide. But I'm just wondering if there's more like communication to the Menlo Park residents about the makerspace, because it seems as though it's an unknown, beautiful resource open to so many people, and I'm not sure everybody knows about it.
That's a good point. I think we probably could bring it up a little higher on the web page, now that you mentioned it. We periodically will advertise or mention it in our weekly e-newsletter, which is kind of our big communication vehicle, about 26,000 subscribers. But we haven't done one in a while. I think it's since the drop-in hours were announced. So that's a point well taken, and we'll see what we can do to kind of elevate the awareness of that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sispott?
Thank you, and I apologize for my newness and my question, which is related to that. So I was about a point where it says that in order to 3D print, you should submit something 48 hours in advance. So how does that submission work? Could you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, that would be, so, a number of the, like, the really granular instructions are gonna be like in the center or available when people kind of reach out to the front desk, because there's just so many details with each of the pieces of equipment that it's not really practical to capture them here. When it comes to the 3D printer, there's instructions there for just basically emailing the, file to the staff at the library. And then we would have a look at it and just make sure there's nothing that would be, like, say, illegal, basically.
Okay, yeah, thank you, that's helpful.
Evidence, things like that.
Yeah, I had a similar question about the 48-hour reservation requirement at number 5 under general rules. Is that at the discretion of the person at the front desk, which equipment is covered by needing to reserve it 48 hours in advance?
So this is something that's kind of evolving at this point in time, because some of that equipment is not yet available for public use, such as a 3D printer and the laser cutter, even the Cricut vinyl cutter. So we're looking to get some policies in place before we roll those out. I do know that Library and Community Services Supervisor Rose Walton is here in the gallery, and she's a little closer to
I can speak to this a little bit, but not too much, only to say that this answer sort of pertains to both of your questions, which is we hesitate to do anything without a policy in place. So a lot of, when building that website is going to be a lot easier once we've got this policy in place. Some of this equipment we do not have yet. This is aspirational. We want to put this stuff in, we want to put it in writing, what we have in mind about using the equipment. We don't have the laser cutter yet. There's a 3D printer in the space, but it's not ours. It's owned by one of our contractors. We may acquire this technology. We may, if the community decides, if the community indicates to us that they're interested in going in the direction, maybe we'll go another direction. But this is the proposal that the team put together for our vision for the makerspace, and we wanted to really think through, okay, what is use going to look like? What you're seeing in this policy came out of staff going and talking to a number of libraries that have makerspaces and trying to gather from them what are best practices, what should we have in writing. So that's what you're seeing, and so with regard to things like the 48 hours for the laser cutter or the 3D printer, we're not there yet.
Okay.
But this is what we have on good information, put packed into the policy so that it's ready when we're ready.
Okay, that's helpful.
So,
Commissioner Paul.
so my first question was sort of already answered in that you're saying that you've been checking with other libraries and their makerspaces to develop your own plans, because a lot of the codification in the document, in the policy is one thing, but it's also the experiences that others have had in their evolution, becoming, you know, what they are today. And our evolution is probably, sounds very helpful to just, you know, have an ongoing conversation with others. Like a case in point where my daughter, who was away at college, said, you know, I asked her what she was doing Friday night, and she told me, at least, you know, this is what she said was, oh, yeah, I just went to the city library makerspace, and, you know, some of us were like, I don't know, crocheting or doing this odd thing. It's like, I've never known you to do that thing, but you know, to what extent is there like, are you seeing sort of an organic sort of evolution of use cases as opposed to just advertising and promoting, okay, you can do this or you can do that? There's maybe some high school groups that organically will, you know, say, hey, let's, you know, work together to figure this thing out, or, you know, do this new hobby, or those who are interested in this kind of thing can meet up at the makerspace. How much of that sort of organic evolution are you seeing happen?
Not a lot yet, but we very much want to make sure that there's space for exactly what you're describing to happen.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Then I think we need to have a motion. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the guidelines?
I make a motion that we approve the guidelines.
Commissioner Pollock, any second?
A good second.
Commissioner Herrick, seconded?
So, through the chair, I might suggest that the motion be made to recommend the policy rather than approve. I think that's.
Okay, recommend the policy.
That's okay. It's a tiny little thing, but that's what we're asking. So the motion is made by Commissioner Pollock and seconded by Vice Chair Herrick to recommend the Library and Community Services Department policy on makerspace use guidelines. Roll call vote. Commissioner Crockett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Herrick, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair, I'll get that right. Commissioner Pollock, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Sispot, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Westcott, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Chair Whitten, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next item on the regular agenda is D3, reviewing and providing feedback on the draft community survey of library and recreation programs. We'll start with the staff presentation and then go to public comment.
Brandon will do the same, deal. Nick, you could just pull it on the screen, so we have it for reference. But as noted in the staff report, we've conducted, various surveys over the past few years. This one is, do a pretty significant one, asking a broad range of questions about library and recreation programs and facilities. This draft survey here in the packet takes a lot of questions from the 2022 survey, which kind of covered most of the same ground. We want to be able to have some before and after comparative apples to apples. From before the Belhaven Community Campus opened to now. So the first few questions are pretty standard. We keep track by neighborhood, ask people to self-report the neighborhoods they're in, how long they lived in Menlo Park, what age groups are in their households. Those questions are the same as I think almost every past survey we've done in recent years, so that we just have that kind of through line of the demographics. We are asking people this time around how often they typically use or visit specific locations. The previous 2022 survey was more about the different programs that they use, but we really want to focus in on the locations and the facilities a little bit more. I'll note that this go around does not include the childcare centers and does not include the pools, because both of those programs recently just received their own focused surveys just within the past few months. So it doesn't make sense to ask them again. And every bit of room we can keep in the survey to keep it focused, we try to preserve that room. So no flags or childcare in this one. It's all libraries, recreation, sports. So ask them which locations they use, how often, how satisfied are they with the physical buildings and spaces in those locations. You'll see that the rating system is basically like 1 to 5, you know, from very satisfied to very unsatisfied. And then we typically leave a space for people to say, I don't know, or just not to respond. Then we have a number of free text comments. So on this one, question 6 is, if you could change the physical buildings or spaces, what changes would you make that would improve them or make you visit them more often? Very typical, similar format to what we've used in the past. Often the free text comments are shed the most insight. And in the past, survey respondents have made prodigious use of the free text responses. So we're looking forward to seeing that. So that's kind of the first bucket. It's about physical locations, how often, how satisfied would you be. The next set of questions are about how satisfied are you with the customer service? And since we are starting with like a location by location basis, we figured we would keep going with that motif, easier for the survey respondents to track. And so again, how satisfied are you from 1 to 5, very satisfied to very unsatisfied, and of course, they can say they don't know. Ask a retest question, if you could change the customer service, what changes would you make that would improve it or make you visit more often? Very typical kind of customer service format there. And then we do move into some programmatic questions. This big one about the library, for library information resources. How important are the following items? And that phrasing is very specific to emulate the phrasing that the city council in 2022 wanted used for the previous survey that we were planning to build at the community campus. I think we had a previous iteration that said how important are the following items to you? And the city council's feedback was to take the to you off. We want people to just comment on how important they are and let them interpret what that means to them. Which I thought was very good feedback and made it into the final survey, so we're preserving that here. And we got very good indications from folks which things are most important on the average. So most of these are carryovers from the previous survey. There have been a few things added. I won't go through the whole list, but you can see a big basket of a lot of different great information resources. Then followed by a free text comment field, question 10, just hey, tell us more. This is where people would either reiterate something that's very important to them, or they'll add something that's not on the list, or sometimes they'll be full field things, which are also good to hear. And then it moves on, the same deal with recreation classes. How important are the following items? And so you'll see various things that are done in the recreation centers, from arts and crafts to dance to gymnastics to martial arts. and so forth on down the list. Same deal, I'll have a pretext question after that, please tell us your ideas, tweets and suggestions. And then we move into athletic and sports programs, how important are the following items? And these are very specific to the sports and athletics programs that either we offer directly or that commonly use our facilities through like groups, like teams that kind of use them on the regular. And so you can see it's very granular, adult leagues, youth leagues, organized, drop in. And then again, tell us your ideas and suggestions. And then we, since we have this additional room in the survey by not doing aquatics and childcare, we do get a lot of comments from the parks, just organically, people's wants, needs, desires. So, hey, well, let's test this out. While we have the opportunity, it's been quite some time since we did a survey about the parks. I think 2019 was maybe the last time. So it's just asking, same formula. How often do you typically use or visit these specific locations? The final survey will probably add like the addresses or have a map so people, because they might not know the name of the park or they go to or they go to. So we'll add that in. But it lists the parks that are owned and operated by the city. There's a couple of other parks that are not owned or operated by the city, like Meadow Park, but we want to stay focused on the city's parks. And then same formula, I'll satisfy it for you with the physical spaces, environmental features, very satisfied, not satisfied. And then a free text again, if you could change them, what changes would you make that would improve it or make you visit more often? Then we are starting to close out. We found that putting the stage question at this point seems to be pretty good, keeps people engaged and tend to fill out the rest of the survey. And then, one final chance to just sound off, let us know anything else, and then we ask if they would like us to send the results. And then there'll be a little more detail in this, send the survey to us with links and QR codes, but basically send the survey to us. So what we're looking at is what like a printed version would more or less be formatted as. The primary vehicle is an electronic survey. That's typically how most people respond. We do make printed ones available. The last survey of this scale we did, the 2022 survey, I believe we got about 1,100 responses, which is pretty good. The aquatic survey, the most recent one, got 900 responses. That was last fall. Also last fall, the childcare survey got 600 responses. Obviously, that was a small addition of people. So our target for this one is 1,000 responses. Typically, about 95% of the responses come in electronically, which helps us because we process the survey results in the electronic system. So any paper ones that come in, we welcome them, but we do manually keep those in so everything's in one place. That's the overview of the survey. Also in the staff report, it mentions the timeline. The Library Commission was the first one. So look at the draft survey, look at your feedback. The Parks and Recreation Commission was going to look at it this week. We're targeting releasing the survey April 5th. So a couple of weeks later, and have it open for a month, close it May 4th. And then bring back the results to the Joint Library Commission and Parks and Recreation Commission meeting at the community campus, which is in May. I forget the specific date. I think it's May 22nd or thereabout. I'm sorry, May 28th. It's the date of that joint meeting. And that concludes the overview. Happy to get a discussion and answer any questions.
So we'll start by taking public comment and then we'll have discussion.
At this time, if you'd like to make a public comment on item D3, reviewing the draft community survey for library and recreation programs, please notify staff. Seeing no public comments.
All right, I'd like to open it up for discussion by library commissioners. Commissioner Pollak.
Thank you. So to a previous question, or that there's some confusion about Belhaven campus versus Onetta Harris facility. Is there a definition that's provided in the survey regarding which is which, or do you kind of adjust, responses sort of like on your own to take that into consideration, that people don't always know the difference between the Bellhaven Library, the Bellhaven campus, the Anetta Harris, Center, et cetera. Has that been an issue?
Yeah, that's a good observation. So as I mentioned in that overview, when it comes to the physical locations, we're looking to add like the addresses, be a link to a map, as again, most people interact electronically. It does make sense to maybe add some definitions of like, you know, what is provided at this spaces. So we'll take that feedback and see what we can do to make that available. Because there's lots of things you can do where you sort of, there's a little information circle that you can hover over and click through. So we'll see what we can do there. That's good.
Okay, thank you. Other question, not to open up a can of worms, but I use the parks primarily for the dog park facilities like Willow Oaks. And I don't use it otherwise, but I see that there's sports included, there's other activities. Is there a point in capturing interest, enthusiasm around dog-related facilities in this survey, or is that just going down in a different direction or too far into detail?
Actually, I think that's a good catch. So we need to incorporate dog parks in here. So thank you for that.
My dog appreciates that.
Yes,
I have a couple questions, but one, I'm just curious, why ask how long have you lived in Menlo Park? I'm just, what is the data point that is important or valuable?
So this question has been in all of the past surveys of the past few years. And our understanding of the intent of that question is just the demographic information. New residents may have somewhat different interests than long-term. And just kind of understanding, you know, what those differences are, help us make sure that we're serving every segment of the community. It's just a piece of information.
Yeah. Okay, and then just the second question was more about the library question in number 9. It didn't seem like it reflected sort of as the list of items, all the program services and kind of events that the libraries offer. Like, for example, it doesn't list the makerspace, you know, as something. And also, it just seems, I know you were trying to replicate the 2022 survey, but maybe update it to kind of reflect what is happening now that we have the 2 libraries with programs and services that are richer, more available in real time. And it doesn't have reservable work study spaces or large community gathering spaces as a listing of options that I know other libraries have and people want.
Great, so a good catch is it's always a balance between, you know, having a good set of examples for people to like select from, but not having the survey become like super duper long, just listing like everything would make the survey long. That said, the 3 items that you mentioned, makerspace, work study spaces, large gathering spaces, it does make a lot of sense to have those in here. So you know, I think that those are good catches.
Yeah, because I see, I mean, you've got things like legal advice and support and money management, financial advice and support, which seems very specific. But the more broader categories of library program services aren't really captured. I don't know, that was my feedback.
Thank you.
So, Kim's question made me kind of think, and also your introduction, Sean, about what city council gave sort of guidance on in 2022 about taking that "you" word out for that one question, that really brought me back to read. You know, when most of them say "you," and those demographic things are really getting to you as a category, as you can interpret data. And I would either take out, my feeling is that number 2, or go further. I mean, I'm struck, because I'm not non-owner in Menlo Park, that I think there are very different needs for people who are non-owners and owners often, just in terms of space and community services. So if you're going toward demographics, I would go further. And so I'm not making an argument either way, whether you should, use this as an opportunity and lots of demographic information to correlate with sort of the response sets you're getting, because that takes a lot of that analysis afterwards. But yeah, I would sort of almost, I don't know if Kim was even arguing, with her question, why is it relevant how long you lived here, right? Your opinion about library services, you live here now, is this, that, or the other. I would probably go either one way or the other, take out number 2 or go further and do a lot of demographic. Fine.
Yeah, just to clarify, it struck me as a question, like, if you haven't lived here for very long, then your opinion is not gonna be weighted as much. That it sent that
Yeah.
message to me. I know that's not intentional. I'm just,
Well, putting a positive spin on that, I'm thinking that it possibly is related to outreach and communications, that, okay, we're noticing that people who have not been here as long are not familiar with some of our services versus other services. If that was what you were attempting to capture, something along those lines, then I would say it's good to put in, questions about how long you lived here, do you live, which area of town do you live in, do people who live closer to a facility, have a different opinion than those who live further away, and looking at ways to better communicate to those people, whether, I don't know, how homeowners versus renters, I don't know if that has a impact on how they consume services, but to the extent that you are using the information to improve communications, I totally get that.
Yeah, this is a good conversation. So really, one of the main purposes is I'm just having some basic demographic, these first 3 questions in particular, but also the one about age later, is partly just to check, is the survey reaching, a broad selection of residents? Like the survey goes back, and it's only the 20+ year residents of Menlo Park that are responding, but whoa, the survey data is not really covered, because we know there are long-term residents, there are new residents, and everywhere in between. Similar with the neighborhoods, really the purpose there is, hey, is there a geographic spread here? We don't want to ask people like their address. We don't really want to ask them like their income. That's not, and that could really start to turn people off to respond to the survey. So like these questions are really mainly like to check, hey, it's a survey reaching everybody.
Commissioner Sisbro.
I think the survey is excellent, and I look forward to seeing the results. I have another very minor point. I echo your points about question 9, and I had those in mind also. The only other thing I had for question 9 was I noticed it's a minor point, but it says story times for young children and then like a space for teens. But I think our libraries do so much more than story times for young children. So I might just change that wording to reflect that breadth a little bit, maybe like story times and activities for young children, because there's, reading challenge, there's library adventure, there's just a million things we do for kids, and it'd be nice to have that included in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Westcott had a question. I tried,
I believe that the reason that it's so specific to story time is because story time is a very staff expensive activity.
I see.
We have an in-house training program for story time, and our story timers have a certain amount of job security because we provide a lot of story times. More than you're seeing necessarily, because we're also providing them to the child development centers. And we do provide them at both of our library locations. So I agree, I think that that's a lovely thought, and hi, by the way. And I love that you are taking into consideration all of the things that we offer for kids. But just in terms of why that was originally stated that way, I think it had to do with the fact that when things are on the chopping block, story time is so important, but it's also so expensive. So
That's very helpful.
So thank you for that, Rose. Let me chime in, and I do think that the Commissioner Sisbet is saying, though, is more than just story time. So maybe there's like another question or two that are really about programs and activities for young children, just to make that distinction. And this is just making me think, because we're, there's a number of new, very good additions here. But question 9 is already a little lengthy, and so I'm just thinking back, and we'll have to go back and look at this, but there were several questions where people were basically just checking very important all the way down, like in particular the ones about books. There's like 6 or 7 specific questions about books in electronic format, books in paper format, books that are classics, books that are the newest. And if I were calling the survey, everyone said, yeah, all that's important. So we might be able to shrink that down into a couple of bigger categories, and then make room for some of these other very good questions. So this has all been great for you guys. So if, with the Commission's awareness, we may try to just reduce the specific numbers of books questions. Part of the reason there were so many in 2022 is we were kind of planning an opening day collection for the new library. So I just wanted to kind of put that out, that we might try to pull people's questions out to make room.
So I have a question related to that in the comment, again, around number 9. So in 2022, my understanding is the survey was directed really to the Belhaven collection, and the Belhaven Future Library, to make sure that correct, these questions are replicating what was asked in 2022 or close, so that you could do.
Yes, and I mean, it was really a citywide overall survey, but the big catalyst was, hey, we want to use this information to inform the new facility as well.
So it was a full survey of everybody, but it was used for Belhaven? This is the concern that I have, is that we collected information and took action, and now we have Belhaven, but we didn't have it before. But there's no differentiation in this survey, because there hasn't really been a survey that's just about the main library, correct? Are you gonna be able to?
It's been a while that we did one that's specific to the main library. However, we feel that the information from this survey will go a long way to help us in that regard. Because again, one of the questions, a couple of the questions are which location do you use, which location do you visit? And because the survey system, you can do crosstabs, like, hey, what do the people who frequently visit the main library say? And what do the people who frequently visit the Belhaven library say? And we can kind of compare those results and contrast them.
Okay, that's good. That's what I was curious about.
I believe Commissioner Westcott has, I've heard him ask it all the time. I don't know, it might have a question.
Thank you. Commissioner Westcott, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question and a comment. I know it's difficult to put a survey together and you can ask many questions. Have you considered a question that was related to how resources compare to other communities that they're aware of or would compare Menlo Park to? So an outward looking question. Just like that to be considered. And the other thing is just more of a question on when the survey is complete, I hope the ad hoc committee could get access to the raw data, because there might be some specific ways to analyze that data that would help us in our work.
Fantastic, so I can respond to those two. As far as like asking folks to compare to other locations, my understanding is that there are some focus groups that are taking place. And visits to other locations that may yield that information might be difficult to put that in this survey, which is really focused on city facilities, but we'll think about ways we might be able to do that. And then in regard to the raw data, we anticipate that the agenda packet for the May 28th meeting will have pretty lengthy attachments. So yes, absolutely, the raw data will be made available.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question about, you said that most of it will be an electronic survey. How is that distributed? Is that through the newsletter that you send out to your 20,000 something subscribers, or is there some other way? Is it like a link in the newsletter, or?
Yes, thank you. So, for the opportunity to elaborate a little bit on the distribution. So, our most effective distribution channel is email. It's still the way, really. So we get most of our responses through a couple of ways. One, we do highlight it in the weekly newsletter. Probably every leading up to the survey opening, like the week before, and then during the survey. We also will direct email the survey, like one specific email that's like, hey, take the survey. And it's not just one item in the whole newsletter. We'll email the survey directly to our list, which also is very helpful. Then we do have print materials and video screens in all of our facilities, the QR code, and we get like a short link like menlopark.gov/survey to encourage people to take it that way. And then our social media channels will also advertise it, promote it. The nice thing about advertising through, promoting through electronic channels is you always include a link or a button. So then usually people are on a mobile device, they'll tap it and then they're in there. So that's kind of an overview of how we run it.
And the emails, where are those emails from? How many people are on that list? Where's it come from?
Yeah, we've built a list of about 26,000. I think it's in elsewhere in this packet, the number of subscribers to the LCS newsletter. And I think we're at 26,000 subscribers or thereabout residents. We've built that up over the years, primarily from library card holders, people who have subscribed on their own from other city contacts. And then the recreation platform, I believe right now it has about 5,000-6,000 who have opted in or not opted out of the newsletter.
So, I guess further on, question 9, and I think it kind of feeds onto what other people have already been saying, is I think maybe the more I read it, is like books that are this, books that are that, books that are the other thing, books that are written in language, it just books, as opposed to certain, to what extent are does staff would certain information be helpful to staff in managing future programs? Should be one approach to survey questions. The other, so I think it was kind of previously suggested, is kind of a promotion of things that, oh, I didn't realize I could get legal advice from the library, and oh, I see on the survey that I can get legal advice or information about food services or homelessness or the makerspace, et cetera. So to some extent, this survey can be used as a sort of a promotional device to residents of like, you might not have known that there was such a service was available, but now, here it is. There is that service available. Would you it's kind of an indirect way of saying, if you knew, now that you know about the survey, is it something you're gonna take advantage of? So I think there's a combination of approaches with question 9 that can shorten it way down to be more helpful for staff and its needs.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really salient point. That is a follow-on benefit of the survey that people, just mentioning something there does sort of make them aware. And I think critically, it gets their thinking going about, like, for, in this case, library information resources. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the free text responses often give you greater insight. And we really do very well getting free text responses. And so, again, we can't list every single thing, but there's enough here, the key ones are there, there's some others that maybe people didn't know about. And it really does, we believe that's what prompts a lot of really great free text responses.
Thank you.
Any other comments, or Commissioner Westcott, do you have anything else?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Now, is there an action item that you want from us on this, or is the feedback and commentary given sufficient?
This has been very helpful feedback and comments. We're not seeking a particular action. It was really just to kind of get your thoughts and suggestions for the survey. So we're going to incorporate and discuss for the next iteration, which will go to the Parks and Recreation Commission next week. They may have some additional, and at that point, we feel we'll see how it goes with PRC. But we have faith in that.
All right, then I think we'll move on to informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the Library Commission and staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on these. The first informational item is the Department of Statistics and recent activities, or there's a staff report. And I think, Nick, you're gonna give us an intro to this.
Just very briefly, the Department Statistics report we include every month. So we've been tracking things now. Some of them we do have year over year at this point. And coming up on a year of statistics from the new community campus building. And then if there are any, we included this time some information about the budget that had been asked in the last couple of meetings. So happy to take any questions you guys might have on the statistics.
One thing on the statistics before we leave it is, I just want to note that the chart is getting like an increasingly tinier and tinier. And I want to acknowledge our management analyst, Ashley Walker, who does a great job wrangling these statistics. But I feel like going 2 years back is making the charts too small to be like really easy to use. So we're thinking for next month, we're just going to do one rolling year plus, the current one 1 year ago. So it'd be like 13 months worth. It might be just a little more legible. If anyone wants to go back in time, just pull an old report. So we look forward to that change next month.
Fair enough. We need to take public comment on this.
Sure. At this point, if you'd like to make a comment on item E1, the Library and Community Services Department Statistics and Recent Activity Report, please notify staff. Seeing no comment.
So I see the attachment with the budget, but is that part of the discussion on the ad hoc subcommittee, or is that? Was that attachment of the budget for statistics?
There was a request at the last month's meeting to provide kind of like a shortcut to see the key information on the library. So that's what's provided here. think that came in the context of the subcommittee update, so maybe.
I just wanna make sure we don't skip over talking about that, but we can do it when we get to the ad hoc subcommittee report
Oh, actually, I mean,
or now.
I had a question about what was provided here. Are we talking about that now?
Because I wasn't sure whether to talk about it now or later, because there's this attachment that shows up in our packet after the statistics.
Right,
So maybe now's the time to talk about it.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think it was a request that was part of that subcommittee discussion,
Mhm.
so either place we can talk about it. Any guidance, next, Sean?
So it's really to the commission,
Yeah, it's up to you guys if you want to discuss it here, or if you wanna discuss it as part of the ad hoc subcommittee report, it doesn't. Makes it, never mind.
It just, is there an attachment B? I'm sorry, I'm seeing an attachment A and attachment C, and I just wanna make sure that there is an
That
attachment.
actually is the hyperlink, I think, to the
Oh.
Google Live budget page, so.
Got it.
Well, since we're on it, why don't we talk about it now, since we've already taken. And I'll just start out with a question. I know, and the ad hoc subcommittee members can chime in with their questions, but having visited these other libraries and just being on the library commission, I think that my feeling, and I think others would be, it was super helpful to just have a layout of what the library budget and expenses, et cetera, are, and then FTEs year over year. And I know that when you go to this website, I found it very difficult to pull out the information from prior years and duplicate what you provided. Because I know it's all under the umbrella of library and community services. And so it would just be helpful, if there was, I guess, a chart or something that would just, and the reason that I'm asking is as we visited other libraries and we're looking to see how our library compares, it would just be helpful to just have a ballpark, feel like we're comparing apples to apples and looking at what our budget is compared to other libraries and with community sizes that are similar, et cetera. And whether it's changed over time as you've added a branch. And I know, Nick can give us this info off the top of his head, but I don't retain it. I wanna be able to look at something that, and without having to create a spreadsheet off of this, budget website.
Thank you for that. Just say, I think it's first for a year over year comparison. Happy to kind of tee that next month. For like our own budget year over year. There's a way to do it. We'll provide that as we've done this. I do think there was a comparison to other libraries when we released the statistics, the statewide statistics. But we can certainly kind of come back and repackage that again and maybe get rid of all the libraries that we don't want to compare to. So I think that last statistical update was in the context of the Star Libraries conversation, if I'm
Yep.
recalling correctly. It wasn't specific to this question. So we certainly can put that together.
yeah, I put the links, thank you, Nick, for providing the links, because I did ask the question for year over year library and community services departmental expenses summary from fiscal year 2020 till current. And so I put it, I was able to put it together, and I also did that on OpenGov for fiscal year 2021 till current. And, the library FTE has gone from 18.87 fiscal year 21 down each year to now fiscal year 25, 11. And our departmental expenses summary, as reported on OpenGov, was fiscal year 2020, 4.1 million approximately. down every year to fiscal year 2025, about 3.2. And it just didn't make a lot of sense since we added a branch. So I really wanted to ask you how this is happening, how the allocation of funds, how the budget works, and if you could walk us through the process, because it doesn't, it's very confusing to have added another branch library and have FTE continue to shrink and expenses continue to shrink allocated to the library division.
Thank you for the question. I think it would be good for the staff to reduce that year over year because the staff levels did not go down and expenditures went up. So let's see what we can do to produce that information for the commission so that there's no confusion about that.
Just to clarify, you'd like to see 2020, fiscal year 2020, 2021 to now, expenses and FTEs.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled it off of the website, so it's there.
We'll go in and see, produce, I think what you're looking for, agree that it's not the easiest system to use, but can definitely confirm that the staff at the library is not reduced and expenditures will not decrease. Also, just a point of clarification, we did not open a new branch. The branch moved from its old location to the current location.
So, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I have to say, I mean, kudos to all of you who worked with the Menlo Park City website and budget and tools, because when I did that quick presentation in December where I just tried to compare, I went quickly online. I really took 30 minutes for all 5 libraries, and I went to all 5 city websites really quickly just to try to grab, how what's the population? What's the basic budget here, there, and there? All 4 other cities managed to just present, it was simple PDF form, that basic information. I could get to it quickly. And so this isn't a critique of the LCS department at all, because clearly this is a city. So, maybe as we go back to council, we say, wow, we had a hard time this year just figuring out what's the basic data, right? And so in terms of open government, this just seems like a fundamental thing. Like, Kim's done an awful lot of work, and like you say, it doesn't maybe seem to be accurate, but that's an issue, I think, for Menlo Park. I mean, I think this department would work probably more efficiently if there were just clear and accurate information out on the web.
Well,
And it'd be
to be clear, the information on the city's budget is accurate, but we'll acknowledge that self-navigating through OpenGov to produce a chart is a pretty intricate process. So if with the commission's understanding that we're happy to go ahead and produce that now that we have better understanding of what's being requested, that also would be helpful for us to produce the information you're seeking, to understand the purpose of the request, how you want to use this information, so that we're making sure we're serving up, something that's useful for the request.
Well, and I think Chair Orton captured it, at least for the ad hoc subcommittee. We're just trying to figure out, are there service gaps? And we can't, of course there's service gaps. There's not enough money in any community to do everything everybody would want to do in a community, but I think we're just trying to be reasonable in how we're kind of assessing. And so we're trying to get benchmarks. Our closest benchmarks are right around us, in the peninsula, I think.
Well, I guess my question is it's my understanding that the library does not have a standalone budget.
Well, no municipal library has a standalone budget, and they're all part of a larger, like, city or county organization.
I mean, as a department, like the city of Burlington has its own budget for the library has its own budget. Menlo Park is a division. And I couldn't find a budget number. There isn't a budget. It's an expenses summary, right?
Well, the expenses and the revenues that comprises the budget, yes.
So the budget number is what?
Yes, so I think when I hear a budget sort of mentioned as you're describing it, people are typically referring to the expenditures, right? How much money is available to spend. And so in attachment C here, the first chart, the pie chart, kind of shows the breakdown in like a pie format. You know, how much of the pie is going to salaries and wages, how much of the pie is going to operating expenses, fringe benefits, utilities, and so on. Then the following page, which would be page E-1.1 in the packet, actually has the dollar figures associated with each of those pie pieces. So you see on the top of that page, or near the top, where it says amount, 3,251,662. That's the total expenditure budget for the library division.
Right,
So that would,
That's-
most people, I think, call the budget for the current fiscal year.
okay, so that's what I was saying, is lower. And has been lower each year since 2020.
I think it's important to look at apples to apples when comparing year over year, and I just want to point out that in the year 2020 was the pandemic, and also at that time is when the Library and Community Services Department was formed, along with some other organizational changes that were made necessary by the economic crisis that occurred at that same time. So doing an apples to apples comparison is quite challenging. It can be done, but it takes some it takes some adjustments to account for those changes. The way the library, the whole city was structured in, say, 2019 was different than it was in 2020, and 2021, and 2022. And now we're sort of back to what I would call a normal, or the normal that we heard about a lot back then. But it's not just like a straightforward business as usual. It's easy to like look at one year over the other and say, oh, well, that's how much it changed. There were a lot of other factors. It can't really be easily captured by not just looking at a series of year over year, like expenditure figures. But now that we better understand, I think what is being sought here, I think I'm hearing that is for the purposes of comparing ourselves to other communities. And again, there's other information that I think would be maybe even more beneficial in that regard, which is to just do a chart of what those other communities' budgets are and compare them to ours. We're happy to do that.
Would it be helpful if Commissioner Crockett just shared what the apples look like? It's like, hey, this is what we've gotten from Burlingame or Redwood City or this other city, and see if we can't align it based on what you're getting from others, as opposed to
Yeah,
try to
we're working on that. Each library visit, we've documented their budget and their staff.
But is there a point, or would it be helpful just to spitball that to share with Sean what some of the other budgets are looking like, or how they're formatted, and ask him to help with the formatting of the Menlo Park information?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I heard Sean say that the staff was maybe taking on because I think they're gonna be able to understand best. And I certainly do this in my job, where I can look at a neighboring campus and realize, oh, they're organizationally different, but in order to compare what I do in my library, I know that they have this number of staff there. So I think I was hearing Sean say, I don't want to put the burden on the staff, but that they're endeavoring to maybe do that for the list of libraries we've visited, so that we can get sort of their expert take on that. And I think that would be really helpful, because like I'm seeing 11 here, and I can see on her thing, and I see on here only 10. So there are fewer in your own data. I mean, actual library FTE currently, and maybe there's an empty one or something. I don't know. Like, there you go. If that's correct, Sean, and I hear Bessie Rose nodding. So I think that would be awesome. And then we can use that in just the same way that we're doing this dialogue all year. And then the ad hoc committee can, tack onto that, I think, in terms of the dialogue. Does that work, Commissioner Westcott, if you're listening, and I know we're jumping ahead already.
Yes.
To ad hoc things.
Yeah, this Commissioner Westcott, I think to start with, if we just need a breakout allocation and you want full-time equivalents, and if you could give the detail you showed with the maybe 5 categories, I think that would be sufficient. Kim, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
Yeah, I mean, that's posted actually on the budget, it's on OpenGov. I, so if you wanna put it together yourself, you did a snapshot, I think, in the package here. But it didn't include the 5 years. It's just this year, so it's. That it would be helpful to have the full picture. And then also the question, of course, I think for the commission is because we're charged in the work plan of reviewing budget and helping to give feedback on that for recommendations. Is to explain sort of the process by which you plan this allocation for the library. How do you determine what you're going to propose to city council for FTE for this upcoming budget year? And how do you determine how you want the departmental expenses to be? Because I think it's in your discretion as library and community services director, right?
The city council is the one who authorizes all.
Ultimately, but you make a recommendation, right?
Certainly.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to the tentative agenda? Calendar? Nick, do we have any public comment on the tentative agenda calendar?
This time, if you'd like to make a comment on item E2, Library Commission tentative agenda calendar, please notify staff. See, no comment.
Is there any discussion by commission members on the agenda topics listed on attachment E2? I think we can move on to commissioner reports. Next, we have the ad hoc subcommittee update. There's a staff report on this. Nick, do we have any public comment on this item?
I'd like to make a comment on item F1, the ad hoc subcommittee update. Please notify staff now. See, no comments.
Right, is one of you going to make a presentation? Someone of the ad hoc subcommittee?
Not really a presentation, but an update. I mean, I did provide an update in the packet, but we've been very busy the last month or so with completing our visits to the libraries. We've gone to Half Moon Bay and Burlingame this past month, as well as Palo Alto Rinconado Library, and some members of the Library Foundation joined us for that. It's been really informative and wonderful to learn about our peer libraries and neighboring cities and see what they're doing and how they're doing it, what their challenges are, and how they're doing their work. Then we also conducted a focus group with a pilot focus group, I should say, the Menlo Park Library of the Future. And we did it here in this room with the Library Foundation members. And since Chair Carol Orton is also a Library Foundation member, she participated in the focus group. And we did kind of, like I said, it was a pilot focus group in which we asked, we did an affinity mapping exercise and Commissioner Westcott led the group through that and some discussion and question and answers and it generated a lot of feedback and ideas about the ideal functions of the library of the future. And so we're compiling, we've compiled some notes on that, and then we're focused on doing more focus group sessions with other groups like teens and parents of young children and groups that, you know, use the library a fair amount, and we'll probably be doing that in the next month or so, in the coming months, actually. And I think that's pretty much the update. I did note the request made for the library specific budget information. I did a lot of emailing. And just because as part of these visits, we were trying to compare our libraries with our peer neighboring libraries. And in order to make that apples to apples comparison, we needed more financial and operational information. So we could really truly see the comparison and find ways that we can improve or overcome some challenges together. So that was the reasoning for that, and I look forward to learning more about the process for that.
Can I add on to the, I don't know if we want to talk about the focus groups as a separate conversation, because I think there's a little, last meeting we did say that we would start, I think, with the foundation, because everybody thought that was, and there's a list here, I think, I don't know if we want to go through the categories of focus groups we're planning to arrange. So if we're going to do this, we probably have to add hoc subcommittee in the same way we did with the library, because this need to hire gear this month so that they could happen by all the focus groups would finish, I think, by end of May, ideally. So do you want that to be a distinct discussion, or how do you want to manage this, Chair?
No.
Or
And
Brian?
this Commissioner Westcott, yes, we realize with the focus groups, we're gonna have to extend those beyond May to get those in. So I just wanted to update you on that. And we, you know, each group takes, it has to be a group of like 6 to 8. But I think we have a process we can use consistently and replicate, which is important. And I might add, the focus, we're trying to make it purely on a library of the future, or a library they would envision. We're not really looking at how they think about the present library, or you know, the goods and bads of the present library. We're trying to focus strictly on what forward-looking library.
And for the focus groups, as you can see, it's sort of buried, about 5 lines up from the bottom. I'll just read them out. Is we've thought focusing on entities that sort of already exist in the community, like their teen advisory, a couple teen advisory boards and everything. So for the teens, we would probably just start with the people who've been willing to serve on those as well, to try to get at least 6 or 8 people. Parents of young children, we don't envision a problem with all the story times, you know, just sort of soliciting volunteers to be involved with that. The friends are one, and then the others, I think, Brian had mentioned he might be willing to do one with just a sample of the business community, which is something we discussed, and I've volunteered. We're sort of missing a key area that actually my own son is just moving into now. He's no longer a young child and he's not a teen, but he's in those crucial reading years. And I'm already realizing that the school librarians of all the different elementary and I think middle schools who touch on the city of Menlo Park districts, I was volunteering to reach out to every one of those professionals who are in the public school systems that touch on our city, to try to do a focus group with them. So that's another thing that I'd like feedback on, about whether people think that's a good idea. And Brian, was that it? Was there another group or community that we thought of that's not, I just didn't read out?
No, I think your list is pretty complete. We're gonna try the business, as you said, the different. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Young children, middle age, mid and high school. Um, I do think, I know this is specific, but I think there's a group that advises the city council that's made out of teens from high school. And maybe we could, that could be a reach out to that specific group as a focus group in the near future. So anyway, Michael, yes, I think all these, and we're gonna have to schedule them at some point, and as I said, I think it's gonna take out into June, actually.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I have a question, follow up on, some of your past reports have talked about the possibility of doing a survey that's specific to the main library. Given that now we've seen the draft survey that, comes from staff, is it necessary to do a separate survey from the ad hoc group, or are the questions that in the draft survey sufficient? Because that'll be going out soon.
Yeah, I think we're gonna just try to discuss that when the survey results from this city come back, and I'm assuming that's why Commissioner Westcott was asking, could we get the granular data? And also when we finish the focus groups, I think the whole idea is we don't want two surveys in the field. My
Right,
personal opinion is looking at this, I didn't do a lot of comments on this, because no, I don't think this survey tool captures at all what the ad hoc committee could do in terms of just the same way the focus groups are just asking very simple questions. What's your vision of the library future? Just open-ended to bring in as many community ideas as possible. And so I don't think we need to discuss that now, just because I feel like, you know, Brian said focus groups will go into at least June. And so this might be a discussion more for July, August, and whether there's some survey type outreach that would happen, you know, in the more distant futures. It's my thinking.
Yeah, and this is Commissioner Westcott. You will still include the preliminary survey at the end of the focus groups, but that's a, small number. And we'll see what we need after that. But yeah, as Michael said, we don't have to do it now. No.
okay. Any other discussion?
So, question, my understanding is that there is an ongoing, regarding the, focus groups, I understand that there is an ongoing, communications of some kind, between staff and, the school district librarians, is that, yeah, I think.
Yeah, so this is the presentation that, because of your very packed agenda, we're going to be having next month, but our outreach presentation is going to be occurring next month, and our sparkling and lovely staff will dazzle you with.
No, well, I wasn't asking for that regard. I was asking simply in response to the question stated about doing a focus group and.
I'm very interested in hearing what local school librarians would like, and whether this is sort of a preview of next month, but there's been a lot of turnover in local schools.
Yes.
And part of our outreach project from, in the last couple of years, in terms of sort of rebuilding an outreach program, it has to do with just figuring out who to talk to and how to reach them. And this is not just something that we're struggling with. We're hearing from, for example, Kepler's Foundation, and they're asking, hey, do you have contacts for the local school librarians?
Mm-hmm.
So, I would actually be very interested in hearing, from those school librarians, if you can find them. And hearing, because we do get a lot of contact, especially with teachers, and we've been having a lot of visits And that's been really lovely, and I don't want to spoil too much of the presentation for next month, but yes, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, is it MA high school or is it the
Actually,
Menlo
we've got a
Park?
great relationship with the librarian at MI.
So it's not MA, but more the Menlo Park Cities District?
And
Yeah.
we have built a list, and we pretty much, I mean, I'm sort of exaggerating when I'm saying, you can find it, we pretty much know who people are. And we are reaching out to them, we send them emails and we make contact. I'd love to hear what they want. I'd love to hear how they're responding to the contact we're making. The sense that I get is they're very, very busy. And that as overwhelmed as we sometimes are, they are more so. And so I strongly suspect that, that while in theory, they would like more stuff from their public library, in practice, what it looks like is, years gone by. But I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of a side benefit of this type of thing is that outreach element that we can help them to engage in, but my thinking in terms of doing a focus group with these particular people, if we can get enough of them in the room, identified in one place at one time, is more that it's very difficult to, like we're doing with the parents of the youngest children, right? Until you get to teenage, it's really hard, unless you're a real professional, you can do focus groups with a room full of 5 through 10-year-olds. We would just like to get the perspective of that age group from people who can kind of speak for them, I think. And so that's more the idea in terms of these focus groups, is to not so much how would you as a librarian like to see the city of, Menlo Park, but more just to get them to give us some data for that age group, because they work with them day in and day out, I think, right? So.
And just to speak more to the issue with the schools, and my question was very straightforward, answered by just like, yes, there is an ongoing process and that can be leveraged by the ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee can contribute to better relations by its efforts towards the objective of building closer relations. The challenge with school districts is that every year when there is a funding or resource issue, basically it's the library and the library staff that is first to go.
Yeah.
And they're constantly looking at ways to, can we have this person work half-time in this role and half-time in another role? And they are up against a considerable amount of constraints, increasing amount of constraints, and possibly the ad hoc committee can contribute to saying, oh, hey, we understand the challenges that you're facing. Maybe that's an opportunity moving forward for the library to take more of a role in this area. So I think it's a great learning opportunity.
Okay, we ready to move on to individual commissioner reports? Short report outs on items of interest to the entire commission.
I can briefly do something as 8:04, and so when I did bring this out, I did just raise, as I saw, as these news items come up over the transom every 24 hours, it seems, in terms of how our federal level of government is changing, that a certain entity called the Institute for Museum and Library Services, which itself is, I don't think is a fairly recent funding stream mechanism, but that it does distribute money through to the state government and everything. So I even had questions when I read this Nuda article that was one of the most recent things that is going to potentially change drastically in the not too distant future. Even just things like the library roof. I wondered, well, I know that came through a grant and probably came to the state of California, but do we know, even for something like that, was that all California taxpayer sourced, or was there, you don't have to answer this now. I just wanted to raise this for everyone's awareness that, things like that, and we're a very wealthy community. So I think IMLS, especially since the pandemic, had been very much focused on communities of real need, I think, in terms of the granting structure. But even so, I just sort of wonder, well, even if it's a small amount of money, that's, 1% of grants that's coming through to just keep the rain out of the top of the building. Just raise that.
We can answer that question now. So the Menlo Park doesn't receive significant funding through IMLS, either directly or indirectly. We've received some small library services and technology ad grants in past years. We're talking low by figures. The library group grant was state funding. So it's not really great, the news that we're hearing about the proposals to reduce the operating budget of the Institute of BTCM Library Services, but we don't anticipate any substantial impacts to the Menlo Park's funding because we just don't really see it from that.
And that's true also the Peninsula Library System? We're sure that they're fully
The
state
library
funded?
system is its own entity. I'm not sure.
PLS is
what they're-
funded by the libraries that are part.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they're not,
They mainly operate off membership dues that the
Okay.
libraries pay.
Mayor? I completely agree with what Sean just said. Remember how in January we did that whole statistics report? Almost all of that data was gathered by IMLS. It's the IMLS survey. Public libraries do it every year. That's what we're looking at. So lots of widespread data.
And without question, libraries in rural areas definitely receive direct funding. It's administered by the state, but it comes from IMLS. There could be impacts there. I know the Braille, I'm talking about library in San Francisco. Receives quite a bit of funding through IMLS. So it's not to say there won't be impacts to libraries in the area, just not directly to the park as far as we know.
Thank you for that. Any other report outs or comments before we close?
So feeding off of the maybe personal obsession with the news and the latest that's going on. I was watching a social media feed on Blue Sky about, people, especially librarians around the country, and everyone concerned about the potential loss in funding and the challenges that latest news provides. And I chimed in that Friends of the Library and Library Foundation can play a key part in the funding of local programs, and gave more information about our Friends of the Library program, and that seemed to be very well received. And other people chimed in, oh yeah, we have a Friends of the Library, or we have that's important to know, so that we're not like just paying for new books at a bookstore, or even worse, at Amazon. This is a great funding source to take advantage of. So kudos to Menlo Park to being so sort of forward thinking and providing the additional funding sources that we need to keep on moving ahead. So that's it.
All right, I think with that, we can close. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 8:10.